Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order this evening of the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners meeting. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. Because of the declared state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 virus, we're doing things a little bit different, and we've altered our traditional meeting process to accommodate and encourage positive public health practices, and encouraging folks to stay home, but yet creating a way for them to participate with us through the utilization of technology. And I hope that folks are taking advantage of that. You can view the meeting and participate in other ways as well. So tonight, we're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Police Chief Bill Carter.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Leading us in our invocation tonight is Pastor Wallace Johnson of the Wendell United Methodist Church. He's calling in. Are you with us, Wallace?
Hey, McRae, yeah, right here. Glad to go ahead and pray.
Thank you.
Lord, we give you thanks for this beautiful spring day. Give you thanks for the ways that you have always been bringing order into chaos in this season of unprecedented chaos. We give you thanks for our town leaders who you have appointed to lead us into your bright new future. Give them peace and grace as they lead. Give them stamina as they are weary in this time. Lord, we give you thanks for our town of Wendell, that we might all be one together and that you might lead us well. Through your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. Can you state your name?
Sorry.
It's okay.
John Lutz, motion to approve the agenda.
All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda from Commissioner Lutz. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, I'm going to poll you individually, just like we did last time. Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnasky?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. That passes unanimously. All right, item number 2 is public comment. The public comment process has been provided in advance of our meeting tonight, last time, and probably for the foreseeable future, maybe, I'm not sure. It's kind of fluid. But people have the opportunity to submit written comments to the town, and you do it up until 5 p.m. on the Friday prior to our meetings on Monday. And if you're unable to do that, you can also participate by call-in. It's my understanding that we have no written submissions tonight and no calls. Is that correct? Yes, clerk? All right. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
From Commissioner Lutz.
Yes,
Any
ma'am.
discussion on the motion? That's quite all right. I have a note reminding me every time.
I need one too.
I understand. I've got a lot of notes. All right, I'm going to poll you again. Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnasky?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. All right, we're going to move into our recognitions, reports, and presentations. And the first that we're going to hear is the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Northeast Area Study Update presentation. We're going to hear from Assistant Planning Director Brian Coates. Good evening.
Good evening. I keep pressing my luck with these short videos and then switching everything. The technology is going to crash one of these days on me.
Well,
But we'll get through this.
yes, we will.
A quick 2-minute video and then a quick PowerPoint. So, give me one moment.
Welcome to the Northeast Area Study Update. This plan is an update of the 2014 plan and study that looked at land use, development, and multimodal transportation within a defined study area. The study area includes Bunn, Franklinton, Knightdale, a small portion of Raleigh, Roseville, Wake Forest, Wendell, Youngsville, and Zebulon, and small sections of Franklin and Wake counties, and incorporates several major arterials along the way. This plan area has seen a lot of growth in the past 6 years. In fact, 51% increase in population. And that increase in growth and development puts pressure on your transportation infrastructure. And so really this is the focus of the study. We will interact with you in several different ways. Email newsletters will be sent out to keep you up to date on upcoming events. We'll host things like a project symposium or an open house up front to interact with you face to face. We'll also follow up with another project. This plan is an update of the 2014 plan and study that looked at land use, development, and multimodal transportation within a defined study area. The study area includes Bunn, Franklinton, Knightdale, a small portion of Raleigh, Roseville, Wake Forest, Wendell, Youngsville, and Zebulon, and small sections of Franklin and Wake counties, and incorporates several major arterials along the way. This plan area has seen a lot of growth in the past 6 years. In fact, 51% increase in population. And that increase in growth and development puts pressure on your transportation infrastructure. And so really this is the focus of the study. We will interact with you in several different ways. Email newsletters will be sent out to keep you up to date on upcoming events. We'll host things like a project symposium or an open house up front to interact with you face to face. We'll also follow up with another project workshop towards the end to talk about recommendations. Along the way, we'll host traveling roadshow or pop-up events. It could be a festival in your community or a church event to talk about key issues and potential solutions. So how do you stay involved? Well, we put together a website. It's the niceupdate.com. There you will find a public survey that you can take, probably takes around 6 or 7 minutes, and an interactive mapping tool where you can go in, identify key problem areas, and suggest solutions for those problems. We encourage you to tell others to do the same. Lastly, Brandon Watson is your project manager. This project is being sponsored by the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And with that in mind, we look forward to working with you.
So this quick presentation before you tonight is an update on the Northeast Area Study, which the video did a pretty good job of talking about the geographies of the area. Campo does these regional plans for all different regions of their area. So like the Southwest study is Apex, Holly Springs, and that area into Harnett County. So we are part of the Northeast study. The Campo vision is to have a multimodal transportation network that's compatible with our growth, sensitive to the environment, improves in quality of life, and is accessible to all. Boundary area, you can see the Wendell area is part of the Northeast study. They really do look at the transportation into the core and from town to town. Multimodal, cars, bus, bike, greenway, all kinds of modes of transportation. In 2014, they heard quite a few things about creating jobs in the Northeast study so that not everyone had to commute into Raleigh or some of the larger municipalities. Sidewalks to connect things, more greenways, bike trails, a need for a healthy return on investment for the region as a whole, and then preserve some of the beautiful lands for future generations. Throughout this process, they're going to reach back out to the community and see if those type of priorities are still what the community is looking for. The update team includes Campo. They have consultants on staff, and then they have participation by planning staff, town staff, and then they're right now starting to ask of what community residents would like to participate on some of their committees. So we're going to make a recommendation, talk to people, see if they're interested. One key thing is this study is going to tie in with our comprehensive plan. So if the public gives input on surveys for this project, our consultant team is working with their team to make sure that we all have same, so we're not going to go out and ask the same residents the same transportation questions and duplicate that if it's certainly not needed. The task, they're going to update the existing conditions. As the video said, there's been a lot of growth in this northeast area since the last time it was updated. Check our development of goals and objectives, land use scenario, create some scenarios to see how potential 10, 20 years, 30 years down the road, what does that look like at our current growth rates, and then adjust them based on our development pattern. Look at future needs of the community, recommendations, performance standards, and then eventually the Campo board will adopt the final document. They'll be back a few times to check in with us as a community. They are going to be attending different events, and will also be promoting their surveys and things through social media. Their timeline for this is to have this study completed and updated by June 2021. As they mentioned, some outreach efforts. They are going to be doing some surveys. If you go to their website now, there is a survey active. They're going to be doing e-newsletter, virtual public meetings, different things, and there will be do some board briefings as well. They'll give us a Northeast study document will be the final outcome, and then they are looking at some hotspots. Hotspots are areas where we have identified as a community things that we'd like to study. For example, intersections of Rollsville Road and Business 64, Eagle Rock Parkway, and or Eagle Rock Road and Wendell Falls Parkway. So different areas in the community. Previously, in the 2014 study, was Wendell Falls Parkway and Wendell Boulevard was identified hotspot, and we are as a community addressing that through the LAP project. So these studies, they do put a little extra time and effort in looking at design and how traffic or pedestrians could move differently through that hotspot area. One that continually comes up is Smithfield Road and I-87, as that's a major interchange. And so if you have certain intersections, we've identified some as staff, but certainly you can send me an email and we can add that to their list of potential studies. And this just shows you what a hotspot study does. It gives you design of the road, pedestrians, cars, bikes, and in this case, they added a roundabout in Youngsville where they had some issues with a red light and not enough room for expansion. Physical challenges, we hear a lot from residents about mobility, whether that be a bus, that could be walking, sidewalks, bike infrastructure, all of those as well. Physical challenge, we have growth, the growth strategies, demographics, we need coordination, so this document kind of provides that for a larger region. And as residents, community, get involved, go to the website. We'll promote this on our social media tomorrow and encourage residents to fill that out and give some feedback. And that's all. I can field any questions if you have any at this time.
Anybody have any questions?
I do, Madam Mayor. Commissioner Joyner. Brent, can you talk about the timeline of our comprehensive plan as well as this, and how you see those two working together?
Yeah, so their schedule is to have this completed by June of 21. Our schedule is about a February, March 2021 schedule. Part of their consultant team for the larger project is actually there are consultants that we've hired for our comprehensive plan. So throughout this process, everything that Wendell residents identify as a priority for the Northeast study, we have that as our feedback as well, that we can tie into community needs for our plan. For example, pulling transportation data, we're not paying for. They've already pulled it for this Northeast study. So our consultants because they're working on both projects, can save some energy and some time as far as the project goes. When they do community outreach, we're going to be there doing community outreach for our Blueprint Wendell as well. So we're not going to have we don't want to confuse people, so we're going to hit them kind of all at once at community events with surveys, questions, and feedback. The one thing they are going to do for the Northeast study is delve a little bit into the regional transit network, which is important for our plan, as we hear a lot of feedback from residents that they'd like additional bus service or changing the time of the buses. And so that does assist us as we move forward as well. So it's a pretty good tie-in. We met with Campo staff probably November, December, to make sure that the two processes could work together and really benefit both organizations.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're going to move into now a big stack of proclamations. May is the time of year, every year, where we recognize a lot of town staff for their hard work for the citizens of Wendell. And so we have three. The first one is a proclamation recognizing the week of May 3rd to May 9th. That's Professional Municipal Clerks Week. So the first one, here's the first one. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the professional clerk, municipal clerk, is the oldest among public servants, whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between citizens and local governing bodies and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas the professional municipal clerk has pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering service equal to all, whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and the community, whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and annual meetings of their state, province, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most important that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk. Now, therefore, on behalf of the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners, I, Virginia Gray, Mayor of the Town of Wendell, do hereby recognize the week of May 3rd through May 9th, 2020 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Megan Howard, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities that they represent. And it's duly proclaimed this the 11th day of May, 2020. So, thank you very much, Megan, for everything you do for us here in Wendell. I appreciate it. That's the first one. The second one is the proclamation of recognizing the week of May 10th to May 16th, 2020 as National Police Week. Make sure I have the correct one. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week, and whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the Wendell Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of those inside the town of Wendell, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of the Wendell Police Department recognize their duty to serve people by safeguarding the life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas all citizens of Wendell should remember and recognize the men and women who serve and protect them, and keep in mind that there are law enforcement officers working in the town every hour of every day to ensure that they remain safe. Now, therefore, on behalf of the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners, I, Virginia Gray, Mayor of the Town of Wendell, do recognize the week of May 10th through 16th, 2020 as National Police Week, and further recognize May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of their duty. Duly proclaimed this the 11th day of May, 2020. We have our chief here with us tonight, so thank you very much. Please extend our thanks to all of the force.
Certainly, Mayor, thank you.
And the last one is the proclamation recognizing the week of May 17th to May 23rd as National Public Works Week. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities, and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Wendell. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children of Wendell to gain knowledge of and maintain a progressive interest and understanding in the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association. Now, therefore, on behalf of the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners, I, Virginia Gray, Mayor of the Town of Wendell, do hereby designate the week, May 17th through 23rd, 2020, as National Public Works Week. And I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Duly proclaimed this the 11th day of May, 2020. We don't have Public Works representative here with us tonight because we're meeting under unusual circumstances, but we certainly thank them for everything they do for us in the town of Wendell and all of our employees, actually, in these three different groups. So, all right, let's move on. To our public hearings. Due to the current state of emergency and in the interest of public health, the following accommodations have been made to allow public participation as required by law. Again, as before with public comment period, items could be submitted in writing or the arrangements could be made both by May 8th, last Friday, to participate by phone. I don't believe we had anyone participate, but that certainly was your right if you had chosen to do it. So we're going to move right on into our public hearing, and it is our budget hearing for the proposed fiscal year 2021, and we're going to hear from Town Manager Mark Collins.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Pursuant to Section 159-11 of the North Carolina General Statutes, I, as your budget officer, submitted the fiscal year 2021 budget for the consideration of the board and provided it to the clerk as required by statute. And today marks the required statutory budget hearing on the budget. You have to wait at least 10 days from the point that the budget officer provides the budget to you before you can take action. So there's no action item tonight. Tonight's just the legislatively required budget hearing. The budget is available on the town website, and per the recently adopted legislation last week after we published this, the town will continue to take public comment on the budget hearing for the next 24 hours, and that would be provided to the board in advance of your decision at your next meeting, if you so choose to take action at your next meeting. This year's budget, the overall number looks a little higher. Obviously, we have some pretty big capital items in our budget this year. The operating budget looks a little closer to normal, but it does represent a 159.1% increase over FY 2020 due to a little over $11 million in capital. 6.5 of that being, or 6.1 of that being a new town hall. The current The budget does propose to reduce the current property tax rate of 47 cents per $100 of taxable value, reduction of 2 cents from current rate. The fiscal year will start with an increase to the Raleigh water utility rate, but staff at your direction is working with the City of Raleigh to complete that merger earlier at the end of first quarter, so long as revenues exist between now and then to cover the additional. Oh, I'll go into more on that a little bit further in the presentation. Solid waste fee remains 22. We'll get into that just briefly. The only other fee schedule changes deal with an increase to the return fee check charge. That reflects the bank charge increasing from $25 to $35, and then simplified special event fees that are wound up into one special event rental. Remind you how the budget document starts. It starts with recognizing that the current year's budget was recognized by the Government Finance Officers Association for Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. This is the first time the town's received that award. Kudos for you for tying your adopted policies to your adopted budget. That's a big part of that. It'll have a new look on the cover this year, and we've made improvements in the budget document to reflect comments we received from our peer review. As we went over at the budget work session, there were 10 big challenges facing the community going into this budget season. First, we knew it was a 4-year revaluation by Wake County. There's a year that our solid waste contract expired. Our leaf and limb service currently is unsustainable, so we had to solve that. There's continuing growth impacts on our staffing and the ability to maintain existing service. We completed a market salary comparison and need to update the pay plan. Tremendous deferred capital facility and infrastructure needs, which is not uncommon following the recession with most municipalities. But as revenues become available, it's time to start looking at how to plan those out and address those. You want to make sure in doing these things that you're maintaining a structural balance over time, that you can continue providing service over time. The one that no one saw coming into this coming fiscal year was the uncertainty around COVID-19 and how that may impact our services and revenues. I mentioned already completing the merger with Raleigh Utilities, and then the directed board goal to try and achieve a net savings in doing all this for your citizens. So quickly going through these, the Wake County property tax appraiser, Marcus, came before you late January, let you know that your revenue neutral rate was 41 cents per $100 valuation, and explained that a lot of the increases to our property values in Wake County deal with a tightening housing market, especially at the lower end of that housing market. So apartments and affordable housing. And Wendell has that. And so we experienced a larger increase in value than some other communities, and it reflects what the market's doing. The solid waste contract extension is another item on the agenda tonight. This budget proposes a 5-year extension with Waste Industries, which leaves prices remaining generally the same for FY21 and 22, then a 2% CPI increase for 23, 24, and 25. Trash service will remain consistent how it is, as well as recycling, with trash being picked up 1 time a week and recycling every other week. The processing fee increases. Our provider experienced larger tipping fee and costs associated with recycling. And so this contract accounts for that additional cost there. We also inquired to see if we could solve that solid waste yard service issue with this provider. And so they're able to add in this contract a yard waste service at $3.65 per cart. Important to note, this is charged to the town and not the resident. The resident will see no increase in their solid waste fee as a result of this. It'll still be the $22 a month that they see on their bill every month from the city of Raleigh. Another important thing for the town staff is to have the direct customer service line. Our residents are constantly trying to reach different points in the organization, and perhaps you yourselves, if something's happening with their service. And so we'll have a dedicated line for customer service with Waste Industries as a result of this contract. And as I mentioned before, trying to solve sustainable leaf and limb service. Some of our more, since we're not in water and sewer, some of our more expensive equipment deals with the vehicles that suck things off the ground or lift things off the ground, the solid waste leaf and limb service that we provide. Outsourcing that to a cart tip by an outside agency means the town does not have to invest as regularly into that equipment. Just last meeting with the first couple phases in Wendell Falls, an additional 5 miles of roads were added into Wendell, and from Wendell Falls. And while the trees in the new subdivisions look nice and small now, 10, 15 years from now, they'll be dropping plenty of leaves, and it's not sustainable for our current staff. So if you can picture trying to pick up the whole town in 1 week, that's going to need a lot more staff, a lot more equipment moving forward. So we're either going to have to go to a much larger future population and ask to reduce service, or outsource it at that point, or go ahead and solve the problem now before it's a real problem for our town. But it's already at the point they can't meet their performance standards on yard waste. The solution, outsourcing that to Waste Industries, no additional cost to our residents. They get the same size 95-gallon large container they can put out weekly, just like their trash or recycling. A separate truck will come and dump that and take it to the municipal yard waste facility for the city of Raleigh. We're able to transfer some costs from Public Works into that expense, so it's a cost-neutral action for the town. Growth doesn't come without costs. It's not just new revenue coming in. Additional residential growth continues at a fast pace. With that, we need police officers. We need to make sure our stormwater systems are compliant and that our public works crews can maintain the stormwater, sidewalks, and streets that are being added to our town system. With those additional service costs, there's also transactions that increase proportionately, and so finance is getting stressed on the accounts payable, receivable side of this, as well as being able to free up our senior accountant to work more on the procurement processes that are more complex as the town grows. In parks, there is a reclassification of a parks maintenance technician to a park supervisor. As we're adding trails and we're adding new neighborhood parks in the coming years, you need that supervisor position to maintain the people working on this. One of our existing parks maintenance technicians, Matt, has already agreed to be reclassified as a supervisor. Wealth and knowledge, he's acting in that capacity right now with the other parks maintenance technician, so we look forward to him starting that this fiscal year. Implementing the market salary comparison, the bar graph on the bottom the consultant showed the commission where we are now compared to our comparative market. The bar graph at the top is what this budget does. It puts us right at the market average There is an additional 3% in-range adjustment for all employees to prevent compression, and it should move people on average slightly above that little black tick. I would point out that it is normal and in the current personnel policy adopted by the board for us to review all the positions every 3 years. And so we'll do that on a rotating third basis moving forward. Get a little bit into infrastructure, but these are some, just to demonstrate a list of things that are going to be done. It'll be a couple years of road improvements, sidewalks, first Greenway starting to connect downtown to the park in Wendell Falls. Phase will be underway. One project that all of the board, when I first got here, mentioned to me in the individual meetings was how can we get the sidewalk out on Wendell Boulevard, and with your help and with the mayor's leadership in Campo, that's been advanced and we've received LAP funding to get that moving in the coming year. Of course, on top there being the new town hall replacement that starts design and construction. A whole bunch of little teeny numbers. The most important thing to note with someone with a magnifying glass on Facebook Live would be that the numbers become positive at the bottom right. And so that's what you need to know as a board, that looking at projections of revenue and projecting forward expenses, that we do expect things to remain positive after a little dip this year and next year, that it should correct. You'll also notice that there are, on our capital improvement plan, that there's still more needs and gap to fill there. So the two can offset, and they're within close enough alignment that I can say that this is a sustainable budget plan. A lot of words here. The main thing I want to point out is that staff is diligently monitoring the current impact of COVID-19 on our revenues. We feel comfortable at this point that we're going to be able to end in a balanced budget without any drastic changes this fiscal year, though we are watching that closely. Moving into first quarter and beyond, depending on reopening or what the public does, even if things reopen or not, how spending impacts different revenues. All of that's going to be monitored closely, and we've identified a plan of things to delay as far as non-capital expending items, holding positions open a little bit longer, tying capital projects not tied to the bank loan, holding those a little bit. So we're able to delay unnecessary expenses until we can see how our revenues start projecting forward. We are fortunate being a growing community that most of our strong, larger revenues are tied to growth. They're tied to increased valuation. The first year I was here, there was a $75 million of new construction growth. You probably saw in my message there was about $85 million in the past year. And from all indications, the construction industry in Wendell is still strong and moving forward. And as long as that remains that way, then our revenues are fairly sound. If the construction does slow down for some reason, our needs and our needs to grow as an organization decrease as well. So we'll adjust appropriately if that happens, but that's not happening right now. Right now, if we were to attempt to merge on this July 1st, there's a $4.7 million cost to that. It's staff's belief that we're not in a position to do that on that date. Staff does propose to continue working on a monthly basis with the City of Raleigh, and their staff has pledged to do that with us. to evaluate to merge at the earliest possible moment. It's anticipated that this could be as soon as October 1st, which would be 9 months earlier than expected at this point. In doing that, the town would use $2 million set aside for purchasing additional allocation, $1 million that's currently in extra payments that the town has made to help pay down the debt in the past year, as well as 1.7 in utility revenue collected in the first quarter. So those three things combined add up to that gap that would complete the merger. In doing so, it's also important to note out that there is debt associated. Paying off the old debt with the water and sewer system gets paid off with that merger as well. So you're also retiring debt even though we're taking on new debt this year. A lot of small numbers and words on the screen for people watching from home. The bold net annual savings comes down to, are we able to achieve a net savings with the tax rate and the utility merger combined? And in most cases, we'll be able to say yes. The more water you use and the less expensive your house, the more savings you'll have. So if this model example up here now has a median house valued at $170,000, with the revaluation in 2021 would be increased to $212,500. That's a net increase in property tax liability of $165.75. That's the new taxes that they would experience this year. If we're able to complete the merger October 1st, there's still 9 months of savings at approximately 40% reduction in their utility bill rate. And that net savings then for that particular example would be $212.57 for next fiscal year. So this budget and how it proposes to deal with the merger in combination with the general fund expenses does accrue a net annual savings to most of your residents. All right. There we go. Looking at the general fund revenues for the year, it identifies ad valorem taxes at approximately 4.3. You'll see intergovernmental revenues unrestricted. That's primarily your sales tax revenue. That one we'll be watching very closely. One that you don't normally see quite this size is the intergovernmental revenues restricted, the 2.199. That's a lot of grant money that's coming in. That's money coming back to Wendell to benefit its residents this year in this budget. And then the $8.5 million at the bottom is the bank loan that we'll probably take out the bank loan towards the end of this coming fiscal year, around this time next year. The actual payments for that wouldn't be until the following fiscal year. And of course, you want to see that 19,507 from the previous slide and your expenses 19,507 equal out and be a balanced budget, which is required for your adoption. Looking, when you take out that 11.27 million in capital, it leaves you with approximately 8.2 million in operating and personnel costs, which is a little closer to what you would normally see in a budget. But again, your total expenses reflecting those capital 11.2 million in capital items. encourage the public to look through and look at all the exciting capital projects that we have coming in this year. Again, the Wendell Boulevard pedestrian project, a Main Street Extension Greenway, neighborhood improvement program for the neighborhoods just west, kind of West Academy, Cook Street, Todd Street area, a lot of paving, sidewalk improvements, ADA accessible crossings over in that neighborhood in the coming year. Adding a second park access road in conjunction with the town hall project, and hopefully there's some money set aside to do some repaving of parking and driveway areas in the park with that. It's important as we grow also to make sure that our police officers, the new positions and replacement of old vehicles are in the budget, and that we are replacing out our utility vehicles and pickup trucks and other equipment. One thing we've learned in COVID-19 is that our technology needs a lot of work, which might be a little evident in some of our meetings, but the ability of people to work from other environments in a mobile platform is really showing us that the static desks, under the desk blocks, just aren't necessary and aren't wise in our current environment. Having some form of mobile technology with docking stations provides flexibility and resilience for our staff. And this budget does start providing, 15 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're in a 55, 56 person organization, that's a pretty good percent if you roll that out over a few years. I know some people have emailed the town and said, hey, we need to work on the tennis court lights. We've heard you, those are being replaced out this year. There is some land acquisition for future parks in this budget. The town hall project, starting to implement some, to actually do the ADA transition plan that's a regulatory requirement, and a specific neighborhood park design for the property that the board agreed to purchase on Hollybrook Road. This does the site-specific master plan that is needed for a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. And then the final funding for our comp plan update that we heard a little bit about in coordination with the Campo study tonight. 16 projects totaling 11.3. When you're looking at debt, you want to make sure that you can afford to take on that debt. In Wendell's case, last year we had approximately $3.5 million. We've paid some amount off, and we'll be paying off, you can see 1.6 in retirements. So when you add the 8.5 and you take off the 1.6, it leaves you at 10.5 million in net debt. That being said, what you're allowed to borrow under the law in North Carolina, which is fiscally conservative, is 8% of your assessed value. And so that's that calculation you see in the gray box on your right. The amount that the town could still borrow after borrowing 8.5 is $49,499,708. There's no intent to do any other borrowing anytime soon. But what you need to know is, in the event that there is some catastrophic disaster, a hurricane or something like that, that we don't want to have happen, and you need to borrow money, you have plenty of room and flexibility that you can still get good rates to do so. Another important policy point to point out is your budgetary fund balance calculation. The town's policy for that is 40%. The budget before you tonight brings you back a fund balance of 91.4%, well above your policy, and definitely above the local government commission minimum of 8%. So it's always important to tie your policies, your strategic plan, to the funding in the budget. This shows you, did staff hear you in getting your goals done in this budget? And you have 5 goals, and I'll quickly flash through those. First one being economic development, downtown vibrancy, community character. And you can see 5 different ways there in this budget that the town is investing to meet those goals. This isn't all that we do to meet the goals. This is just how it's in this particular budget. When you look at Goal 2, dealing with public safety and neighborhood improvement, the CALEA manager's on for a full year. You have two new police officer positions that'll help expand some capacity for community engagement and department training, which are both goals. An increase in wellness and equipment for the law enforcement officers is one of those goals, and that is, there are increases in both of those lines above last year. We're continuing the employee wellness program for the police officers, reimbursing them for expenses. The Wendell Boulevard pedestrian project is really going to be a major enhancement to pedestrian safety in the area of Wendell Elementary School. That was a top priority item for the board. The neighbor improvement program definitely provides for some downtown infrastructure and housing improvement. Getting into infrastructure and transportation, you can see there's a long list that you can review there. I know you've had a chance, board, to see this. This is the first time your public has seen it. Wendell Boulevard, the additional improvements in neighborhood access to parks. The utility merger was an important item on this one. The solid waste contract, stormwater compliance, all of these items you'll find in your Goal 3 initiatives. 4, Parks, Recreation, Special Events, and Culture. The first neighborhood park design funding is in there. It gets into implementing the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Another first for Wendell this year is the first Greenway segment to be designed and constructed. Starting to acquire the land before you wait too long and land values go up. So starting to put those connections together. And then making improvements to what we have, make sure that we're investing in Wendell Park is another one of those goals. The final goal deals with more organization and internally, but one's just to maintain a fiscally conservative approach. I think I've talked for a while about trying to retain due to the just almost overwhelming at times needs the community has right now in infrastructure and keeping up services with the growth. But to be able to provide back and reduce the rate by 2 cents is meaningful in our current environment. Getting our ADA transition plan and getting our facilities and programs and technology accessible to all of our residents is important. The new town hall, making sure that your employees work in safe environments as they provide service to our residents. The compensation and classification study update has been talked about, I believe, for years, but getting that finished and implemented in the budget. Technology, and maintains our IT consulting, security, and support service. So where we are today, May 11th, the budget hearing, so holding the public hearing today. If all goes well, we'll bring that back to you Tuesday, May 26th for adoption at your next regular meeting. And then just reminding you that the budget process continues on to your strategic planning process later in the summer and fall, and incorporating the community and your goals into the next 2 years fiscal plan. And with that, I'd be happy to take, well, I guess, Madam Mayor, you're welcome to hold the public comment period. I would just remind you again that there is a 24-hour written public comment according to General Statute 166A-19.2 that'll continue past our public hearing, that people can still provide written comments to the clerk at mhoward@townofwendell.com or the finance director, bk@townofwendell.com.
Any questions from the board? Comments?
We do need to open and close the public
Yeah.
hearing.
I'm just going to do that next.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing. This was the opportunity for the public to speak, either over the phone or if they had submitted comment, but I understand that there's not any. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing, and we'll get back to it in 2 weeks. All right, moving on to item number 6, our administrative items. Item 6A is the amendment of Article 7, holidays and leaves of absence for the Town of Wendell personnel policy related to sick leave and compliance with the Family Medical Leave Act. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Board. Our Human Resource Administrator would typically be here presenting this, and she is the HR professional, and I will do my best standing in for Debbie tonight. She has reviewed our current personnel policy that was drafted before the Town of Wendell had 50 employees. And the number 50 is important with many federal code with different requirements, and the Americans with, or the Family Medical Leave Act and Americans with Disability Act are two that both kind of trigger at that point. Family Medical Leave Act is our federal requirements that are closely associated with our sick leave with the town. It provides people protection to take a certain amount of leave every year, regardless of whether or not they have town leave. The town sick leave can be used to compensate during that period. If they need to be out beyond that, they're able to still do so under the FMLA. Our past ordinance was loosely structured to allow for an extended medical leave, but wasn't required to comply exactly with FMLA. So the attached amendments, I believe at your seat also was a copy of the strike-through version. So you can see kind of what was taken out and what was added to that personnel policy. I will say that these are changes that are required to be compliant with law. If you have any particular questions based on what you read, I'd be happy to answer those. But I will assume that to some degree that the board has read this, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Are there any questions, comments?
I would like to thank our HR administrator, Debbie Kennedy, who might be listening in right now, to give her credit. Yeah, she reviewed the whole policy area there. She reached out to our comparative jurisdictions surrounding us, compared the different codes, and then wrote this policy to match Town of Wendell's needs, the FMLA legal requirements, and be consistent with our neighbors as well.
I'm looking for a motion.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the proposed personnel policy amendments.
Now, Commissioner Lutz has made a motion to approve the personnel policy amendments. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Nope.
All right, I'm going to poll the board. Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tornaski?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right, thank y'all very much. Item 6, and it passes unanimously. Item 6B is a resolution declaring official intent for the reimbursement of capital expenditures and to finance the cost of projects through the issuance of debt pursuant to the United States Treasury Regulations 1.150-2. Hear from Mr. Collins again.
Thank you, Mayor. As we talked about earlier in the budget process, if we're going to incur expenses before we borrow money for the capital projects in next year's budget, this resolution allows us to charge those expenses back to that debt so that our general fund reserve doesn't take those costs, the bank borrowing that is budgeted to cover it does. This is a process that's set out through federal government and is required by a local government commission. This is the resolution before you is an adapted template from the local government commission. It has to list all the projects that would be eligible. These are the projects that match what's in your budget for FY 2021. It allows us to reimburse. Probably the first expenses that we may start incurring would be with the town hall design. But since we wouldn't be doing the borrowing till around this time next year, there may be other projects that, like Wendell Boulevard sidewalk or the neighborhood improvement program, that need to move faster than that next fiscal year. And this will allow us to pay the money up front and then pay ourselves back. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the board?
Madam Mayor?
Commissioner Boyette, a motion to adopt a resolution declaring official intent to reimburse capital project expenditures.
There was a question last time about the making of motions by commissioners not present.
Jim, are you able to hear that legal question?
I think we can certainly attribute it to anybody.
No, I did not hear the question.
The question raised by the mayor was, is a commissioner who is not present in the boardroom able to make a motion to approve an item?
It came up at our...
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yep. Legally, yes.
As of last Monday, the answer is yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. So can you state the motion again, please, Commissioner Boyette?
Yes. I make the motion to adopt the resolution declaring official intent to reimburse capital project expenditures.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt the resolution of declaring the intent to reimburse capital expenditures. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tornaski?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right, thank y'all. Item 6C is an amendment to the solid waste services contract between the town of Wendell and Waste Industries to extend the contract 5 years effective July 1, 2020.
I feel like I presented this one a couple times the last couple meetings. But for the record, the current contract is scheduled to expire June 30th, 2020. The proposed contract that would extend that contract for an additional 5-year period, effective date July 1st, 2020. It amends cost, services, and length of contract and leaves the remaining contract alone. It extends the length 5 years. It adds weekly curbside yard waste service for residential customers at no additional cost to the customer. The town covers that cost in the solid waste fee that remains the same. It sets the rates for services. Current rates remain the same for this year and next fiscal year. The following 3 years, the rate increase is 2% per year. That's equivalent to a 20-year average for the CPI governing that industry in this area. Town pays for the actual disposal costs of yard waste going to the City of Raleigh yard waste facility. We do that currently. Recycle processing costs for 2021 is increased to $127 to cover costs. That's going to be reviewed annually. If costs go up, we may adjust that rate up. If costs go down, we may adjust that rate down. Town is responsible for, right now, the town is responsible for receiving customer concerns or missed service and entering that into the waste industry's portal and then them responding to that. So there's a lot of intermediary time of our staff to provide that customer service right now. This does provide that the responsibility will be the waste industries to set up a dedicated line with a customer service representative that's familiar with Wendell. Existing trash and recycling service stays the same for the remainder, and yard waste would be added, so there's an additional service. The town would still need to work with waste industries and our public to message that out between now and July. The way that we see the service providing is, instead of just putting yard waste out anytime at the curbside, where not just the yard waste decomposes and adds nutrients to our stormwater system, but a lot of the times there's pet waste in that yard waste as well, and that adds fecal coliform into our water systems. And so making sure that we get the yard waste put into the cans and then that dumped helps with our stormwater program. It also reduces our maintenance costs on our drainage features by having things not clog up those drains quite as much along the streets, curb and gutter streets. Waste industries would be picking that up weekly, just like they would do your trash service. If someone had a larger trimming, and some of the older parts of town have bigger trees, I hope my vegetation gets that healthy and lush sometime. But you know, if you have that large spring pruning, what have your fall pruning, you are able to will be able to call the Public Works Department and schedule that cleanup for those larger pickups. Also, a 95-gallon container is not going to do it during leaf season in this part of the world. So during that time, we'll identify zones and have leaf season pickup that'll still be curbside by our staff. But the reduction from us having to do that every week, everywhere in town, to someone else doing that, and then us just being the on-call and overload service is a significant savings to our staff and equipment moving forward. We'll be able to redirect those hours to stormwater, streets, and sidewalk repair that they haven't been able to get to when they're basically a yard waste removal service. Again, no increase to the solid waste fee. As a result, in this year, we'll evaluate that moving forward. This is a more like an enterprise fund where the fee is expected to cover the cost of the service, so we evaluate that annually, and this is a year that we do not need to increase it despite having this additional service. Any questions on this item?
I just have one comment. I want to make absolutely sure, and you did mention about getting some education out to folks so that they understand, because I feel like we've all worked real hard to get them to call the town hall or call Public Works, and I feel like we just have gotten there, and now we're getting ready to change it again. So we need to really make a big effort, and it may take some time.
So with our plans within Town Hall is if we receive a call anywhere within our organization, we're going to transfer it to a dedicated line within the town phone system, and that's going to be forwarded to Waste Industries. Okay. So regardless of where that point of contact is with the town, we'll be able to transfer that call to them directly to handle. But yeah, and then there's anytime you change anything, there's a tremendous amount of communication needed, and then reinforcement of that over time, and just helping people through that.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Maybe other comment. Commissioner Joyner, Mark, I want to thank you for this, and I appreciate it. This is one of the spots that I think in our budget kind of is a good visualization of what you're doing everywhere else and what the team's doing everywhere else in the budget, which is figuring out where there's a cost savings, figuring out how we can do some reorganization, and then figure out how we can provide better service. That's certainly, in my opinion, achieved here. The moving of the phone, I certainly understand, is our staff would greatly appreciate. It occurred to me, though, that we're going to lose the mechanism of noticing when service is not up to par, or at least up to par in the resident's mind, purely because it's just not running through us. Is that something that you think we could ask Waste Industries just to provide us a report at some revolving amount of time, just how often?
So that's a good point, Commissioner. Within our current contract, and one of the points that continues forward is there's a performance portal that our public works staff is able to see how many calls Waste Industries has taken, the nature of the complaints, where those complaints are, so they're able to see if there's repeat customers, why things are happening in particular places, and message that out. We'll still remain that. There's also a monthly reporting requirement within the old contract that's also a feature. So yes, just because you outsource something doesn't mean that you're no longer accountable for it. We're still accountable as a town for that service, and we need to hold our contract agent accountable to meet the terms of a contract. And we do that.
Certainly appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments from the manager?
Madam Mayor, you're looking
Yes.
for a motion?
Yes.
Commissioner Lutz here, I'll make a motion to approve the contract extension between the town and Waste Industries for 5 years, effective July 1st of 2020.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Lutz to approve the contract extension between the town and Waste Industries to extend the contract for 5 years, effective July 1, 2020. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, let's poll the board. Commissioner Joyner? Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnasky?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
And the last item, item 6D, is the update to the pay plan and position classification to reflect the Piedmont Triad Regional Council study completed January 2020.
Great. And so another item that you should be familiar with, the consultants came January from Piedmont Triad and presented the findings of the study and went through a series of charts and tables and how they derived their market analysis, and they talked about the shortfalls of our old pay plan, and even just down to the detail of the structurally the ranges not being the right distances apart and so forth. You know, one thing that we didn't go over much is, well, why are we even doing a pay plan? And it's within our personnel policy. This is a directive we received from the board in the adopted personnel policy, and it defines that pay plan as the salary schedule and the assignment of classes to grades that's adopted by you, the board. The salary schedule consists of the minimum, the midpoint, and the maximum salary in a range, and it does that for all classifications within the town. That provides for the town manager and the human resource officer to administer, but ultimately it's a budgetary responsibility of the commission to set those ranges in that pay plan. The town manager reviews that annually, and as I mentioned before, we'll go on a rotating basis for a 3-year review of the full pay plan moving forward. what's presented in your packets tonight is consistent. There are two changes that reflect budgetary additions. The consultants initially started receiving data from the town about this time last year, prior to formally starting. At that point, there wasn't a parks maintenance supervisor nor a stormwater program manager for them to review and do a market comparison. So staff has independently done those and inserted those at the appropriate level. Parks maintenance supervisor at 19 is the same as a crew lead for public works. And you probably know stormwater program manager at 25 is around a senior planner or a higher level accountant position. That's where the responsibilities under those positions work out. We did receive advice from consultants in other jurisdictions in setting those. I also want to disclose, it's in the plan, but I want to openly disclose that my position's not in the old plan. The town manager position wasn't in the pay plan. It's just an independent contract amount. This plan did recommend that puts the town manager position in the pay plan and classification like other employees. I like to be treated like other employees, and so it sets the manager's rate just below average, the market comparison like everybody else's. But I did want to point that out in case there was any question. The proposed pay plan before you does set the grades at market average, and it corrects the variances as presented by the consultants in March. In addition to the findings of the study, I did mention that in the budget there's an additional 3% that'll move people within their ranges. That's really important to deal with compression. If you think about like a police sergeant that might have been promoted 5 years ago, and you have recession times and they're not moving in their range very much, you hire a new police sergeant, they're getting hired close to the start of the range, just like the guy that's been there 5 years, and then that guy's got to train the other guy how to do his job. With 5 years more experience, getting paid about the same. So you have to make sure your employees move through their ranges to keep that from compressing at one end. And so that 3% in the budget deals with that. If you have any questions about the pay plan, that's the last miscellaneous things to get things ready for budget adoption.
Any questions from the board for the manager? Okay, look for a motion.
Madam Mayor, and again, to the manager, thank you for bringing this plan forward. We are, as you said earlier in the budget, that sometimes there's a benefit of being the small municipality in a large county. There's definitely a downside to that, and that is the market that we have to compete in. With the amount of growth that we've seen projected, I think that this is vitally important to keeping our talent where they are and recruiting the best talent. With that, I'd make a motion to update the pay plan and position classifications to reflect the Piedmont Triad study completed in January.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Joyner to update the fiscal year 2021 Town of Wendell pay plan. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, I'm going to poll the board. Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnasky?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
Let's move on to item 7, other business. The one we have tonight is the Wendell Volunteer Fire Department Board of Directors. We're going to hear from Commissioner Joyner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Wendell Fire Department Board of Directors met last Thursday virtually, as well as having a couple members in person. The county budget is processing through the Wake County Fire Commission or is working through their budget. We believe that Wendell Fire Department is well positioned to continue into next year, obviously with the new station opening, and like we mentioned last time, hoping to have folks come out in the future to see that station, but not right now. But the fire department is obviously taking on a 30% increase in staff, which for the administration is, and in a lot of ways, they are experiencing the same growth that the town is experiencing. There's some other things that have gone, that usually go unnoticed, and that have gone unnoticed during this time, and I want to highlight one of those things. I don't think that most residents of Wake County know that you're living in one of the top 2, arguably, if not top 3 places in the country if you don't want to die. That is cardiac arrest. This is the CARES database, but Wake County is the leader in doing cardiac arrest management. Looking forward to how we normally do that, the county acknowledges, because we have people that in leading 70, 80 folks that are resuscitated each year, and we have a code save ceremony. Normally it's something that you would see once, and folks don't think about it. We had a lot of code saves this year. That ceremony's been delayed, but I wanted to highlight tonight that one of the code saves is actually Commissioner Boyette. We spoke about it the other night in our board meeting at the fire department. So just acknowledge that we have community leaders that otherwise would be celebrating their wins from last year, and they're not right now, but that's because they're on the front lines continuing to fight. And just wanted to thank Mayor Pro Tem Boyette and acknowledge his code save this year.
All right, thank you. Moving to our commissioners' reports, and we'll stay with you, Commissioner Joyner.
If you could start with someone up front, Mayor, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Excuse me?
If you could flip your end, if you could start with the other end, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Okay. Well, we'll start with Commissioner Deloach.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Encourage residents to take a look at the budget. 24 hours to make public comment on that. But obviously, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out. Citizen board seats, application process is now closed. But if you've applied and you would like to discuss your application, your thoughts, feel free to reach out, contact me as well. I'll encourage everyone to please continue to shop local, support our local businesses. And finally, Madam Mayor, I would like to wish my lovely wife a happy anniversary. So thank you for supporting me, and thank you for all that you do for Wendell. Happy anniversary.
Commissioner Lutz?
I'll look at a lot of Commissioner Deloach's comments in regards to the budget. Give us input, give us thoughts, and then in regard to the public office, citizens boards, excuse me. If you've applied and you want to share your thoughts or share your opinions or discuss ideas or just introduce yourself, please reach out to us now. It's much easier to get to know you now, have time to talk versus the night of a meeting or about to vote or the day before. So I would highly encourage that too. And then also thanks to the town staff for working so hard on the budget. It just seems so professional and so exciting, all the stuff that's going on. It's exciting, and so it's fun to read through this and not just see the numbers, but see all the things that are happening. So thanks everybody.
Commissioner Tornatsky?
Good evening, Mayor. And I'd like to say that I'm glad we're finally in stage 1 and working on getting things reopened in Wendell. Looking forward to everything being reopened. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyette?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I would like to thank Commissioner Joyner for the kind words from the Board of Directors. As we all say, it's just another day on the job. We've been with the fire department for almost 20 years, and I think this will be my second or third code save. So it is a little bit of a rare occurrence, but it's one I take seriously, and it's always a good day. As much as I'm happy about it, I'm much happier for the person that they got to see their family again. I want to thank staff for all the hard work they put in on this budget. It couldn't have been easy here in the 11th hour, pulling all this together while not having, well, it's not as easy as to step across the hall and ask a question of you know, your finance manager, town manager, and all, you know, all the many people that come together to put this budget together. So I just wanted to say thank you and job well done. It's absolutely great budget. And it goes without saying that being able to peel 2 cents uh, off the tax rate um, says two things. It says that we've worked hard to keep our finances in check, as well as a great job by staff recognizing opportunities where they exist. The other thing it says is that Wendell's a growing community with rising property values, and we can provide the same or even higher level services with a lower property rate because property values are rising, and they're rising quickly. And so I just want to say thanks again to staff for that. And that's all I had for tonight.
Thank you. Good job. I want to real quickly just thank the finance director, Mr. Kay, and the town manager for all their hard work on the budget. It's very exciting. It's exciting to see so many things come into fruition, and the organization and professionalism was just impeccable. Thank you both very much for that. I really appreciate it. I'm very proud of it. I also want to thank all of our citizens for their patience. We're all figuring out technology and how to best conduct our meetings and conduct our business. We're still open for business, but we're having to do things a lot differently now. So thank you for your patience. And let's see. I think that everything that we do takes several extra steps now and has additional challenges. And I just want to remind everybody to please continue to be patient and kind with our staff, because they will get back to you and they will help you take care of everything that you need. The last thing is I wanted to remind everyone that the Wendell Farmers Market starts this Saturday. It's going to start Saturday, May 16th and run through October 3rd on Campton Street, where it's been the last year or so, and it's open from 9 until 1. There will be spread out. There'll be appropriate distance between the vendors. So it should be a safe environment for everyone to come and do their shopping, and I'm very excited. I believe there are 8 vendors coming this year, and this is just getting started. I'm sure it will grow and get bigger. And we have a lot of things in mind, and Stephanie's been working really hard on it, so we appreciate that from you. We need a motion to adjourn, please.
Commissioner Joyner.
I'm sorry. This is what happens when you break me out of my routine. I have to come back and circle back.
I apologize.
To
I'm not
Joe
good
to
at taking
correct
those.
me. Thank you, Commissioner
ma'am.
Joyner.
Not to add any length, I think Commissioner Boyd and others have said what I intended to say, but I truly want to thank our staff through this budget process. Reach out to us. It's certainly not too late. You're hearing now for the second time. Reach out to us if you have questions or concerns. A lot of times those questions this afternoon, for instance, paid off because we had the ability to get you an answer a little bit quicker. So we look forward to doing that, and that just echoed that we look forward to seeing the things that we've been talking about for a while come to fruition. And it's nice to see us in a position where we can take those steps together. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Now I need a motion to adjourn. Why don't you give it to me, Commissioner Joyner?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned.